Sunderland's comeback to the Premier League feels like a dream come true for fans who've stuck by the club through everything. As one of the newly promoted sides, nobody really expected much, maybe just survival. But instead, the Black Cats are playing brave, exciting football and showing everyone that they belong at this level.
Remain as the ball's fired in early, and it's there from Wilson Isidore! There is time, there is late drama. Who's the daddy?
But it's brilliant what they've done, and we need to see teams from the Championship that come up do well. It'll still be difficult as the season goes on, but it's a great start for them. So yeah, what a great start for Sunderland, and they deserve a special mention.
To see Sunderland sitting in the top half of the table, even if temporary, is something supporters can hardly believe. This squad feels special. There's a perfect mix of young stars and experienced leaders. New captain Granit Xhaka has brought calm and fight to the midfield, while young talents like Chris Rigg are grabbing their chance and shining on the biggest stage. And with head coach Regis Lebris guiding them, plus a summer of smart new signings, Sunderland have found a new identity. They are a fearless team full of energy. Their first game back in the top flight set the tone, a 3-0 win over West Ham at the Stadium of Light, a statement to the league that Sunderland are here to compete. Then when they pulled out a draw against Aston Villa, despite being down to 10 men for the majority of the game, the 46,000 fans at the Stadium of Light roared. Every goal, every save, every cheer feels like pure release after years of pain. To really understand why this feels so sweet, we have to look back at how hard the journey was. Sunderland's story over the past 9 years has been one of heartbreak and rebuilding, of losing their way and slowly finding it again. The 2016-2017 season was the end of Sunderland's decade-long tenure in the Premier League.
That they're down, and there is the final whistle. And after flirting with relegation for so long, Sunderland are finally down and out. There will be no rescue act this time. It brings to an end 10 successive seasons in the Premier League.
After years of narrow escapes, the drop finally came. David Moyes had taken charge after Sam Allardyce left for the England job, but from the start he looked beaten down. The squad was thin, money was tight, and Moyes' early admission that a relegation fight was inevitable didn't inspire confidence.
Let me tell you, we're not enjoying it. We're not enjoying losing. We're not enjoying the position we're in. Well, when you're the manager in the bottom of the league, then it's expected. But let me tell you, it's the first time it's happened to any club I've been in.
Sunderland never got going. They finished dead last, doomed with weeks to spare. Jermaine Defoe still scored goals. Jordan Pickford shone in goal, but even they couldn't save the team. When relegation was confirmed with a 1-0 loss to Bournemouth in April, fans felt crushed. Defoe left for Bournemouth, Pickford was sold to Everton, and the squad broke apart. After years of fighting, Sunderland were done. If Sunderland fans thought going down from the Premier League was the worst that it could get, the 2017-2018 season proved them all wrong. Their first year in the championship was supposed to be a fresh start, but instead it turned into a nightmare. By the end, Sunderland suffered the unthinkable, a second relegation in a row, this time dropping all the way down to League One. These guys were going down more than Bonnie Blue. Simon Grayson had started the season but was gone by October. Chris Coleman came in with a reputation from his Wales heroics, but even he couldn't fix things. Lewis Graben scored goals early on, but he walked out mid-season, saying the club had no direction. Like, think about it, the guy basically rage quit mid-season, asking his parent club to call him back from loan. From then on, it just spiraled. The final blow came at home against Burn Albion. Leading 1-0 through Paddy McNair, Sunderland just collapsed late. Darren Bent, who's a former Black Cat, actually scored the winner. Relegation to League One was confirmed. Off the pitch, there was also some changes. Owner Ellis Short sold the club to Stuart Donald, writing off debts in the process. Fans hoped it was the fresh start they needed, but Sunderland were now a giant in League One, and climbing out would prove to be a nightmare. With the size of the club and the incredible fan base, it felt like they were just gonna walk the league. And for a while, it looked like they might. But in typical Sunderland fashion, it ended in more heartbreak. The summer of 2018 brought some big changes. Jack Ross, a young Scottish manager, came in to rebuild a squad that had been ripped apart. Out went the old Premier League names, in came hungry League One signings like Max Power and Chris Maguire. And the star of the show, Josh Maja, a 19-year-old academy striker. Maja's goals had Sunderland flying, but with his contract running down, he was sold to Bordeaux mid-season. The club then spent £4 million on Will Grigg to replace him, but he never lived up to the hype. Without Maja's goals, Sunderland started drawing far too many games, like Arteta's Arsenal when they're in a tight title race. Sunderland barely lost, but those 19 draws cost them automatic promotion. They finished 5th and had to take the playoff route. In the playoff final at Wembley, they faced Charlton. After an own goal that gave them the lead, Sunderland fans were in dreamland, but Charlton equalized and then won it in stoppage time. To make it worse, Sunderland had already lost the Checker Trade Trophy final to Portsmouth on penalties earlier that year. 2 trips to Wembley, 2 heartbreaks. Still, there were some positives. Aidan McGeady had become a fan hero. Youngsters like Lyndon Gooch grew. What a name, by the way. Maybe I gotta get my head out of the gutter. And the crowds still stayed huge. But missing promotion meant another long year in League One. Sunderland had learned that nothing, not even in the 3rd tier, would come easy. The struggle wasn't over. Sunderland's 2nd year in League One was supposed to be the year where they finally got out. After the pain of the playoff defeat the season before, the fans hoped that the team would come back stronger. Instead, it turned into a stop-start campaign that ended once again in disappointment and frustration. Jack Ross stayed as the manager, but the results were patchy, and he was replaced by Phil Parkinson in October. Parkinson came in, known for his no-nonsense style and experience in the lower leagues. At first, things actually got worse. Sunderland went on a long winless run in the winter, and the atmosphere around the stadium got pretty toxic. But after some January signings and a switch to a more direct style, the team finally found a bit of life. Charlie Wyke started scoring, and in February, Sunderland strung together some wins to climb back towards the playoffs. It wasn't the prettiest of football, but it was effective, and supporters got behind it because at least there was progress. Then, the world stopped. In March of 2020, the pandemic hit, and football was suspended. Sunderland were sitting in 7th place, just 1 point outside the playoffs, when the season was cut short. The league decided to finish on a points per game system, and Sunderland ended up 8th, missing the playoffs altogether. It was brutal. Fans were furious, convinced the team would have made the playoffs if the season had just been allowed to finish. Instead, another year in League One was confirmed in the most anticlimactic way possible. They basically blue-balled everyone. Off the pitch, patience with owner Stuart Donald was fading fast. The goodwill he had when he first came in was gone. Missed promotion attempts, lack of proper investment, and the expensive flop of Will Grigg left fans questioning everything. By the summer, Donald admitted he wanted to sell. The optimism from his early days had completely vanished. By the start of the 2020-2021 season, Sunderland were a sleeping giant in the 3rd tier of English football. By now, the pressure was immense. This was their 3rd attempt to actually get out. Phil Parkinson continued as manager, but his tenure did not last much longer. Sunderland began the season decently, but not spectacularly, and fans remained unconvinced by Parkinson's pragmatic Route 1 football. Come late November of 2020, with Sunderland outside the top 6, the club decided to part ways with Parkinson. What do you know? A manager has bad results, he gets sacked. United should take notes. In stepped Lee Johnson as the new head coach in December of 2020. Johnson brought energy and a more attacking philosophy. But the biggest changes were actually happening at the boardroom level. In early 2021, Kirill Lewis-Dreyfus, a 23-year-old from a wealthy football family, bought into the club and became a chairman. Nice to see a working class lad get success. With him, fans finally started to see a long-term vision. On the pitch, Sunderland were doing well. They won the EFL trophy at Wembley, ending decades of Wembley misery. But in the playoffs, they fell short again, beaten by Lincoln City after a spirited fight back. It was disappointment again, but with Lewis-Dreyfus and new sporting director Christian Speakman, it felt like the club was slowly moving in the right direction. The 2021-2022 season was the one that Sunderland fans were waiting for. It was finally the year that they broke free from League One. With Lewis-Dreyfus now fully in charge, the club doubled down on rebuilding. Under Lee Johnson, Sunderland started the campaign strong. By Christmas, they were at the top of the table, and Ross Stewart couldn't stop scoring. Add in Alex Pritchard pulling the strings in midfield, and Sunderland looked great. But after a humiliation at Bolton, Lee Johnson was sacked. In came Alex Neil, and suddenly Sunderland became rock solid. They went on a 15-game run, losing just once, and finished 5th, back in the playoffs. This time, the story was different. After beating Sheffield Wednesday in a dramatic fashion, thanks to Patrick Roberts scoring in stoppage time, Sunderland went to Wembley to face Wycombe. In front of nearly 46,000 Sunderland fans, academy graduate Elliot Embleton scored early, and Ross Stewart sealed it late. Sunderland finally had escaped League One after 4 brutal years. Tears flowed, confetti fell, and fans could finally celebrate a Wembley win. The parade back in Sunderland showed just how much it meant to them. Thousands lined the streets to celebrate. After 4 long years in the 3rd tier, the Black Cats were finally awake again. In the Championship, most expected Sunderland to just survive. But under Tony Mowbray, who replaced Neil after a shock move to Stoke, Sunderland played fearless football. Jack Clark shone on the wing, Patrick Roberts dazzled every time he got on the ball, and Loney Amad Diallo lit up the league. Amad became the star of the show, scoring wonder goals and quickly becoming a fan favorite. Despite injuries to Stewart and others, Sunderland somehow kept pushing. On the final day, they snuck into 6th place and the playoffs.
Sunderland pull it out of the bag at the last. 3 big goals to go with 3 points taken by Blackburn, and they make it to the playoffs. They were the better team.
In the semi-final, Amad scored a wonder goal as Sunderland beat Sheffield Wednesday at home. But at Luton, their injury-hit squad couldn't cope and lost out 3-2 on aggregate. It was heartbreak again, but this time with pride. Nobody had expected Sunderland to even be in that position, and they had overachieved massively. What mattered most was that Sunderland were back to playing football with identity and belief. Promotion didn't come this time, but you could feel it in the air. It wasn't far away. After the excitement of the 2022-2023 season, this new season felt like a reality check. The Championship is brutal, and Sunderland's young squad found that out the hard way. What started with some real promise turned into a stop-start campaign that ended with a mid-table finish and plenty of frustration. The summer was rough. Fans knew that Amad would return back to Manchester United, where frankly at this point is not even an upgrade over Sunderland. But losing Ross Stewart on deadline day to Southampton really stung. He had been injured for much of the previous season, but he was still the team's main striker. Without him, there was a big gap up front. New faces came in, like Joe Bellingham, just 17 with a lot of buzz, and veteran Bradley Dack added experience. But it was clear that Sunderland didn't have a proven goal scorer anymore. Tony Mowbray stayed on as manager and the early signs were good. Sunderland smashed Southampton 5-0 in one of the first games, and the optimism came flooding back. Jack Clark was unstoppable at times, finishing the season with 15 goals. But over the months, the team's form dipped. At home especially, the results were really poor. They lost more games at the Stadium of Light than anybody expected. By January, Sunderland had slid into mid-table, and whispers grew louder about whether Mowbray was the man to take them to the next level. By spring, their playoff dream was more dead than players' careers when they joined Manchester United. It was a big step back after the high of the year before, and the fans, well, they felt deflated. Sunderland finished 16th with 56 points. Still, there were some positives. Joe Bellingham showed glimpses of real talent. Pierre Ekwa developed into a powerful presence in midfield. And Luke O'Nien once again proved he was the heartbeat of the team, filling in wherever he was needed. But overall, the season felt flat. And it was obvious that changes had to be made. That change came in the summer. In June of 2024, Sunderland parted ways with Mowbray and appointed Régis Lebris, a French coach known for developing young players at Lorient. Sunderland went into the 2024-2025 season with one clear mission: to get back to the Premier League. With Lebris in charge and some bold signings like Mayenda and Lafille, the belief started to grow that this might finally be their year. They became a tough side that played good football and finished 4th, heading into the playoffs again. This time though, destiny called. The semi-final against Coventry City was tense, but Sunderland dug deep. Jack Clark provided the magic when needed, and the defense held strong. After beating Coventry in the semis, Sunderland faced Sheffield United at Wembley. Nearly 85,000 people packed at the stadium, with Sunderland fans turning it into a sea of red and white. But when Sheffield United scored first through Tyrese Campbell, hearts sank. Were they about to lose at Wembley again? This time though, Sunderland didn't crumble. They kept pushing, and Mayenda slid home the equalizer. Suddenly all the momentum was theirs. And then came the moment.
It's Tommy Watson. This would be some farewell. Goodness me! That's how you say goodbye!
The Sunderland end exploded. A local lad sending Sunderland back to the Premier League. It was the perfect story. When the final whistle blew, It was pure joy. Sunderland were back in the Premier League after 8 long, painful years. This wasn't just a promotion, it was redemption. After all the heartbreak of back-to-back relegations, the years stuck in League One, and the playoff failures, Sunderland were finally back where they belong. And for the fans, it felt like the start of something big. And now, here they are, back in the Premier League, and thriving. Backed by TV money and smart ownership, Sunderland spent big. A ton of money on players like Diarra, Adingra, Mukiele, and of course, Xhaka as the captain. They even now have a new goalie in Roofs, who has been very good. Most thought they would still struggle, but Sunderland started strong. A 3-0 win over West Ham on opening day, and from there they kept pushing up the table. The Stadium of Light is sold out every week, bouncing like it hasn't been in years. The players who carried them through League One now share the pitch with Premier League superstars. The Tyne-Wear derby is back, and for the first time in a long time, Sunderland fans don't just have hope, they have pride. They were one of the fastest, most direct teams in the championship last year. They don't mind sitting back, soaking up the pressure, and then hitting on the counter at the right opportunity. Their counter-attack is led by Wilson Isidore and Mayenda. Mayenda is the dribbler, quick, tricky, able to beat players one-on-one. Isidore is more about explosive runs in behind. Both thrive in open space, and that's the weapon they are using now against Premier League defenses that push up high. When teams sit deep, Sunderland look to the wings. Lebreeze loves building little 3-man combinations out wide. A winger cutting inside, a fullback overlapping or underlapping, and then a midfielder joining in. The constant rotations drag defenders out of position and create openings. Players like Patrick Roberts, Romain Mundle, Enzo Lefebvre, and Adingra make this system tick. They are all confident dribblers who can beat their man, which explains why Sunderland led the championship in take-ons last season. Crossfield passes are another weapon. Luke O'Nien can spray long diagonal balls to the wingers, instantly flipping the play. With Xhaka in the midfield now too, those switches have become more dangerous. Sunderland lost Bellingham in the summer, but they've tried to replace him with Habib Diarra, a powerful ball carrier. Alongside him, Lefebvre brings energy, pressing, and creativity. And then of course there's Xhaka, the skipper, the anchor, the man who brings leadership and calmness on the ball. When defending, Sunderland often drop into a compact 4-4-2 shape, making it very tough to play through them. They press aggressively on the wings to force opponents sideways or back, rather than letting them cut through the middle. Sunderland have spent big, and their plan is very simple: to make their style from before sharper than ever. Faster wingers, more depth, more bodies in midfield. Lebreeze isn't trying to reinvent the wheel. He wants Sunderland to stick with what got them here. Fast breaks, wide triangles, and fearless dribbling. This style has allowed Sunderland to do what previously promoted clubs could not: actually compete at the top flight.